All right, so today we're doing something kind of cool. We're going to really get into this whole world of aircraft engine assembly. A world that most of us only really think about when we're, 30,000 feet up in the air, and we've got all this source material here. And it's interesting stuff because it's really aimed at, someone who's actually thinking about this as a career. So that's kind of the lens we're going to use today. Imagine asterisk. Asterisk wanting to build the heart of a plane.
Yeah, and it's interesting, these sources, they go way beyond that kind of basic job description stuff you usually see. It's not just assemble parts. They get into the precision involved, the problem solving, the complexity of these machines. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. Right away, I was struck by, you know, how many different types of engines they actually cover. It's not all just those giant turbine engines for the huge jets. We're talking lightweight piston engines too, like the kind that go in those small planes. What are those, the Cessnas?
Exactly. And that actually kind of hints at how there are these different paths you can take asterisk within asterisk the field, right? You could specialize in those really intricate piston engines, or you could, be all about the massive turbines that power those commercial airliners. It's kind of like choose your own adventure, but for engine assembly.
That's a really good point. It's not just one size fits all kind of career. Huh? Okay, so one thing I noticed, the sources use this term prefabricated parts a lot. So it made me wonder, how much of this job is, actual problem solving versus just very carefully following instructions? Is it a high stakes Lego set or what?
That's the question, isn't it? It's probably like a spectrum, right? I'm guessing when you're starting out, it's all about that precision, sticking to those technical drawings super carefully. But then I'd imagine as you get more experience, you become more of a problem spotter, right? Someone who can fine-tune things, maybe even suggest ways to actually make the designs better.
Yeah, because, even the tiniest mistake in an aircraft engine, and the consequences could be huge. And speaking of that, the guide, it really emphasizes those technical drawings and the safety standards, and it even mentions needing some electronics knowledge. So it's clear it's not just about mechanical skills. It's this very detail-oriented way of thinking you got to have.
Totally. Think about it, quality control in this context, it's not like you're just checking if some product passes inspection, right? You're making sure that an engine performs perfectly, with the lives of hundreds of people depending on it flying through the air.
That is a pretty serious thought when you put it like that. It makes you appreciate, just how much responsibility these assemblers actually have. And the guide also mentions some alternative job titles, like aircraft engine technician and engine installation mechanics. So it's this one role can kind of branch out in all these different specialties.
It's true. It's like being right at the center of this whole aviation ecosystem. You could start as an assembler and then maybe you move towards diagnostics as a technician, or you find your niche in that super precise art of actually installing these engines in the aircraft. There's a lot of possibilities there.
And speaking of different career paths, the guide actually lays out this whole progression, from junior assembler all the way up to senior levels. And as you move up, you get more and more responsibility, leadership stuff, mentoring, that kind of thing. It's kind of I don't know, leveling up at a video game or something, except, well, the stakes are a little bit higher.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? The career trajectory is actually surprisingly detailed for a general guide like this. It really gives you the sense that, this isn't just a job. It's a craft you can really get into and build on for your whole working life. Imagine that, starting with those smaller parts, mastering those, and then years later, you're leading a whole team that's putting together an entire turbine engine. That's got to be pretty satisfying.
That's a good point. Okay, but so what kind of person are we talking about here? Who thrives in this kind of environment? Is it the kid who grew up with their face glued to those aviation documentaries on the Discovery Channel? Or is it more about just being a super meticulous, detail-oriented person?
It's probably, a bit of both, right? I mean, being passionate about aviation, that definitely wouldn't hurt. But reading through this, it seems like it really comes down to a certain mindset. You need that meticulous attention to detail for sure, but also the ability to really focus under pressure and the patience to troubleshoot when you're dealing with these really complex systems. But then imagine, finally seeing this huge engine roar to life, knowing that your hands helped build that thing.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that does sound pretty amazing. But the guide is not all sunshine and roses, right? It talks about the downsides too, like how physically demanding it can be, the high stress, the potential for like getting stuck in a rut, doing the same things over and over. So it's not all, gleaming turbines and the glamour of flight, is it?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You got to be realistic about what the day-to-day actually looks like. It's about doing this very meticulous work, often in like physically demanding situations.
Hmm.
And that pressure, knowing that, even a small mistake could have really big consequences, that's always there.
Definitely not for the faint of heart, this
Yeah.
career path. It takes like a certain kind of resilience,
Yeah.
and dedication for sure. Okay, so the guide, it mentions some of the, I guess, more obvious pros and cons, but what about the less obvious stuff? Like, are there any rewards or challenges someone thinking about this should really be aware of?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is just the sheer scale of what you're building. It's one thing to like put together a gadget or something, but you're talking about a machine with thousands of parts that's going to propel an aircraft full of people across continents. That sense of contributing to something so much bigger than yourself, to the wonder of flight. That could be a huge motivator.
It's like you're not just building an engine, you're building like a bridge across countries, a connection between people.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to think about it. And, even if someone's not like about to quit their job and become an aircraft engine assembler, just listening to this, it gives you this whole new appreciation for the people who do this, the next time you fly.
Absolutely. Recognizing that human skill, that precision that goes into every single flight, it's pretty amazing.
And speaking of human skill, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room, right? Automation. One of the FAQs in these sources, it kind of touches on how automation might change things, job security, all that, which is a big topic these days, not just in aviation. Yeah, it's not even just about robots like taking over jobs. It's how technology changes what skills you need to have in the future, period.
So when it comes to like aircraft engine assembly specifically, where do you see that line getting blurry, between like human expertise and automation?
Honestly, the sources are kind of vague on that, which is a little frustrating. Like they mention new materials, advanced manufacturing processes, but concrete examples of how automation is actually affecting this specific job, they're kind of thin on the ground.
Okay, so time to put on our speculation hats, I guess. Based on what we do asterisk know, where do you see this going? Well, I mean, it's pretty logical that we're going to see more automation in like the repetitive tasks, the stuff that's physically demanding, right? So think robots handling those super heavy components, or maybe assisting with the assembly steps that need like really extreme precision.
So less heavy lifting, more brain power needed, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But, and this is key, I don't see a future where human expertise is just completely out of the picture.
Okay.
Because, you can program a robot to follow a set of instructions, right? But you can't like easily program the intuition of an experienced assembler.
Yeah.
Imagine, something doesn't look quite right, even if it like technically meets all the specs on paper. A robot might miss that. But a human eye, someone who's been doing this for years, they might catch a tiny flaw that could be the difference between like a smooth flight and a potential disaster.
That makes sense. It's like all those years of experience, they build up this like sixth sense almost, an intuition that's really hard to code into a machine.
Exactly. So instead of replacing humans, I think automation might actually push the field like upwards skill-wise. So, assemblers of the future, they might be more like specialized technicians working asterisk with asterisk robots, troubleshooting, making sure the quality is there, but at an even higher level.
So that line in the source about needing like a basic understanding of electronics, it suddenly doesn't sound so nice to have anymore, more like essential for anyone who wants to do this in the future. Like, yeah, you got to adapt to the technology and, use it to your advantage to enhance your own skills.
100%. It's not man versus machine. It's man asterisk with asterisk machine, like a collaboration to see what's really possible.
This is really making me think about aircraft engines in a totally different way. But before we get too far into like the future of all this,
it's good to remember we are asterisk speculating here, right? Like we're working with what we've got, but the future is, full of surprises. Exciting ones, hopefully, but you never know.
that is true. But that's honestly what makes these deep dives so interesting. You take what throw in some educated guesses and see where you end up. But speaking of what we do asterisk know?
You're talking about the fact that this job, with all its, intricacies and demands, exists in the first place.
Exactly. We've gone deep on the how of aircraft engine assembly, right? The nuts and bolts, literally the career paths, this whole automation thing. But I think it's time we circle back to the why.
You mean, why would someone choose this whole thing as their craft? Why this work?
Yeah, like what is it about this kind of work? What makes someone think, yep, meticulously assembling these complex machines that make flight possible, that's what I want to do?
That's a really good question. I mean, the sources mention job satisfaction and all, but it's more focused on, the end result, like seeing those planes actually take off, not so much the actual craft of putting those engines together.
Exactly. So is it just like a love of aviation?
Yeah.
Or is there something about, I don't know, certain personalities that just like really digs the precision, that meticulous kind of work? Because let's face it, a well-built engine, even if it's hidden away under the hood, there's a beauty to that, you know?
Oh, totally. Think about like those master craft people from way back, right? Like picture a watchmaker hunched over, carefully putting together these tiny gears and springs, or a shipbuilder painstakingly fitting those huge timbers for like a sailing ship. Their satisfaction came from that pursuit of excellence, taking raw materials and turning them into something precise, functional, even beautiful. I can see that same kind of ethos being a huge part of this field, too.
Yeah, it's like they're part of this like long line of skilled craftspeople, even if the tools and the tech have changed a lot over time. Which makes you think about the teamwork aspect too, right? Because we often picture this, like lone assembler putting in the final pieces, but
But in reality, there's this whole, like, symphony of human effort that goes into it, asterisk, before asterisk, that final assembly even happens, right? I mean, you've got the miners getting the raw materials, the engineers designing these incredibly complex components, logistics people making sure all the parts get where they need to be on time. So, yeah, the aircraft engine assembler, they're part of this huge, intricate web of human skill. They bring their own unique piece to something so much bigger.
I love that the human tapestry woven into like the fabric of modern aviation. It's a good reminder that even as things get more automated, human skill and ingenuity, that's still at the heart of it all.
And who knows, maybe that's what will keep attracting people to this field, That human element, that connection to a long tradition of craftsmanship. There's something kind of timeless about taking raw materials and turning them into something that, like, pushes the boundaries of what we can achieve.
Totally. It's like we started this whole deep dive thinking about, nuts and bolts, maybe some fancy robots in there, but we've ended up somewhere, I don't know, kind of profound. This like very human desire to build, to create, to be part of something bigger.
And that's the great thing about these deep dives, right? You never know where they'll take you. But I think this actually brings us back to something really important for anyone considering this as a career. It's not just about the technical stuff.
Right.
It's about a certain way of thinking, a certain mindset you got to have.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one. What kind of mindset are we talking about?
All right, so imagine this. You're like elbow deep in an engine, right? And something, it just doesn't feel right. Like you've got the specs right there in front of you. Everything asterisk should asterisk be fine. But your gut, that feeling you get from years of experience is telling you something's off. Do you ignore it? Just shrug and move on. Or do you have the confidence and the curiosity to really dig in, maybe find a flaw that could, have huge consequences?
So it's like this blend of like being super precise, but also having that intuition, that gut feeling that you've built up over time, almost like being a detective, but for like microscopic defects in an engine.
Exactly. And that's not something you learn overnight, right? That judgment, knowing when something's not right, even if you can't quite put your finger on it, that comes from experience, from good mentors, from being part of a workplace that actually values that kind of like meticulous questioning approach.
Which probably explains why the career guide made such a big deal about those senior level roles, the ones where training and mentorship are like a core part of the job.
Yeah.
It's about passing down that, I don't know, almost instinctual understanding of the craft.
And honestly, I think that's what makes any job truly meaningful in the end, even if it involves repetitive tasks or stress. Knowing that your skill, your dedication, it has a real impact on the world. It makes a difference.
What a great place to wrap things up. We've gone from like the nitty-gritty of engine parts to this much bigger conversation about craftsmanship, about dedication, about that very human need to like build things that matter.
And we've only just scratched the surface. This whole thing about skilled trades and automation, that's something we could spend a whole other deep dive on easily. It's a conversation that's happening in every industry right now.
For sure. But for now, dear listener, we'll leave you with this. Next time you're on a plane and you feel that little thrill as you lift off, take a second to think about the amazing world of aircraft engine assembly. It's a world of incredible precision, of people working together in this like quiet dedication to keeping us all connected.
And who knows, maybe one of you listening will be building those engines of the future, combining that human touch with cutting edge tech, taking us all to even greater heights.